The massive space station called Nexus floated in the darkness between the stars. It was bigger than most moons and had been the center of galactic power for over 3,000 years. Ships from dozens of worlds docked at its ports every day, carrying diplomats, traders, and beings seeking justice from the Galactic Council. Today, a small human ship approached one of the docking bays. The UES Liberty was not impressive compared to the giant vessels that usually visited Nexus. It was plain and functional, built for long journeys rather than show, but the aliens watching its arrival knew that this small ship carried something important. The humans were coming to answer the Council's summons. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, looking out at the enormous station. He was a tall man with graying hair and steady brown eyes. Years of commanding ships in deep space had given him a calm manner that his crew trusted. Behind him stood 3 other humans who would join him in the council chambers. Dr. Lisa Carter was a scientist who studied alien life forms. She was younger than the captain, with short blonde hair and quick green eyes that missed nothing. She carried a small device that could analyze any creature she met. Lisa had spent the last 10 years learning about the different species in the galaxy. She knew more about alien biology than most aliens knew about themselves. Commander Ryan Blake was the military advisor for the mission. He was a big man with dark skin and careful eyes. Ryan had fought in the border wars against space pirates and had seen what happened when humans were not ready to defend themselves. He did not speak much, but when he did, people listened. Ambassador Helen Torres was the leader of their diplomatic team. She was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and a sharp mind. Helen had negotiated trade deals with 6 different alien species. She knew their languages, their customs, and their weaknesses. If anyone could find a peaceful solution to their current problem, it would be her. The Liberty docked with a soft thud that barely shook the deck. Jake looked at his team. They all knew why they were here. The Galactic Council had decided that humanity was growing too fast and becoming too strong. The Council wanted to put limits on human expansion into space. "Remember," Helen said as they prepared to leave the ship, "we are here to listen first. Let them speak their minds before we respond." "And if they don't want to listen to us?" Ryan asked. "Then we will cross that bridge when we come to it," Jake replied. The 4 humans walked through the corridors of Nexus Station. The halls were wide enough for the largest alien species to move comfortably. Strange symbols covered the walls, written in languages that had been ancient when humans first learned to make fire. The air smelled of ozone and metals that did not exist on Earth. Other beings moved through the corridors, paying little attention to the small group of humans. There were the tall, thin Zephyrians, with their insect-like features and buzzing voices. The Vorthak looked like walking crystals that caught and reflected light in beautiful patterns. Gas-based Netheri floated in special suits that contained their cloud-like bodies. Dozens of other species went about their business in the heart of galactic civilization. The humans reached the council chambers and stopped before the massive doors. Each door was 50 feet tall and carved from a single piece of black stone. Guard robots flanked the entrance, their red sensors tracking every movement. "The council will see you now," announced a mechanical voice. The doors opened with a deep rumble. Beyond them lay the most important room in the galaxy. The council chambers were shaped like a huge bowl, with 12 seats arranged in a circle at the bottom. Each seat was designed for a different species, and each held a being that had lived for centuries. The humans walked down the steps toward the center of the chamber. Their footsteps echoed in the vast space. Above them, thousands of smaller seats held observers from across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to see what would happen when the council dealt with the human problem. High Counselor Vextar of the Vorthak was the first to speak. His crystalline body pulsed with different colors as he communicated. A translation device turned his light patterns into words the humans could understand. "Humans of Earth," Vextar said, his voice carrying the weight of ancient authority. "You have been summoned to answer for your actions in the galaxy. In the 50 years since first contact, your species has expanded beyond all reasonable limits." Jake and his team stood quietly in the center of the chamber, listening. High Counselor Zarthek of the Netheri spoke next. His gaseous form swirled within his containment suit. Your military buildup threatens the peace we have maintained for millennia. Your colonies spread without regard for established boundaries. Your technology advances without proper oversight. We have evidence, added Counselor Mordek of the Zephyrians. Her insect-like mandibles clicked as she spoke. 17 new human colonies in the past 5 years. Military vessels in systems previously marked as neutral. Research stations gathering. Data without council permission. Helen stepped forward slightly. Honored counselors, if we may respond to these concerns. You may not, Vexitar interrupted. This is not a debate. This is an assessment. You will listen to our findings and accept our judgment. The humans exchanged glances but remained silent. For the next hour, the council presented their case. They showed star charts marking human expansion. They displayed images of human ships and space stations. They read reports from their spies who had observed human activities in distant systems. The message was clear. Humanity was growing too fast, becoming too independent, and developing too quickly. The council had decided that something must be done to control this dangerous trend. Other young species have faced similar challenges, explained Counselor Velthar of the Corvani. The Cathari were restricted from space travel after they became too aggressive. The Relan were relocated to worlds better suited to their nature. The Horvik accepted guidance from their betters and now live in peace. Lisa made a note on her device. She had studied what happened to those species. The Cathari had been stripped of their ability to travel between stars. The Rillan had been forced to abandon their homeworld and move to less desirable planets. The Jorvik had become little more than servants to more powerful species. We understand that change can be difficult, Zarthek continued. But the galaxy has an order that must be maintained. Every species must find its proper place in that order. Jake felt a cold anger building in his chest, but his face remained calm. Beside him, Ryan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Helen's diplomatic smile never wavered, but her eyes grew hard. The council has reached its decision, Vextar announced. Humanity will be placed under supervised development. Your military forces will be reduced to levels appropriate for system defense only. Your expansion will be limited to worlds approved by this council. Your technological research will be monitored to ensure it serves the greater good of the galaxy. The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Thousands of alien eyes watched the 4 humans standing in the center of the room. In return, Vextar continued, humanity will receive the protection and guidance of the Galactic Council. You will be safe from external threats and internal conflicts. Your people will prosper under our wise leadership. Jake looked at each of his companions. Helen's diplomatic training kept her face neutral, but he could see the fire in her eyes. Ryan's military bearing never wavered, but his hands had moved slightly closer to his sidearm. Lisa continued to scan the council members with her device, gathering data that might prove useful later. We require time to consider your generous offer, Helen said, her voice perfectly polite. Several council members made sounds of amusement. Zarthek's gas form swirled faster within his suit. Consider? There is nothing to consider. This is not a negotiation, Ambassador Torres. This is a decree. Nevertheless, Jake said, speaking for the first time since entering the chamber, we will need time to discuss this matter among ourselves. Vextar's crystalline form pulsed with annoyed colors. Very well. You have one standard day to accept the council's wisdom. We will reconvene tomorrow at this same time for your formal acceptance. The 4 humans bowed slightly and turned to leave. As they walked back up the steps toward the massive doors, Jake could feel the weight of alien stares on his back. The council believed they had won. They thought humanity would bow to their superior wisdom and ancient authority. They had no idea how wrong they were. The 4 humans walked through the corridors of Nexus Station in silence. Other beings moved around them, going about their daily business. None of them paid much attention to the small group of humans who had just received an ultimatum from the most powerful authority in the galaxy. Jake Morrison kept his face calm, but his mind was racing. 50 years of human expansion into space was about to be crushed under the weight of alien bureaucracy. Everything his people had built, everything they had achieved, would be placed under the control of beings who saw humans as nothing more than unruly children. They reached the docking bay where the UES Liberty waited. The ship looked small and fragile compared to the massive alien vessels around it. But Jake knew that appearance could be deceiving. The Liberty carried technology that would surprise the council members who thought they knew everything about human capabilities. Once aboard their ship, the four humans made their way to the conference room. Jake sealed the door and activated the privacy shields. The room was now completely isolated from any listening devices that might exist on the station. "Well," Helen said, sitting down at the table, "that went about as well as we expected." Lisa pulled out her scanning device and set it on the table. "I got readings on all 12 council members during the session. The data is interesting." "Interesting how?" Ryan asked. "Their biology suggests that most of them are very old, even by their species standards. Some of them might be approaching the end of their natural lifespans. Their technology seems to focus on life extension rather than innovation." Jake nodded. "That explains their attitude. They have been in power for so long that they can't imagine things changing." Helen activated the quantum communication system. The device would send their message instantly across thousands of light years to Earth. Within moments, the face of President Maria Gonzalez appeared on the screen. "Jake," the president said, "I've been waiting for your report." "How did it go?" "About as bad as we feared," Jake replied. "They want us to accept supervised development, military restrictions, colonial limitations, technology oversight. The full package." President Gonzalez was quiet for a moment. She was a woman in her 60s who had led Earth through some of its most difficult years. The colony wars, the first alien contacts, the rapid expansion into space. She had seen humanity grow from a single world species to a galactic presence. "What exactly are they demanding?" she asked. Helen leaned forward. "All military vessels larger than frigates to be scrapped. All new colonies must be approved by the Council. All technological research must be submitted for their review before implementation. In exchange, we get their protection and guidance." "Protection from what?" the president asked. "From ourselves, apparently," Ryan said with disgust. "They think we're too aggressive and expanding too fast." Lisa looked up from her device. "Madam President, my analysis of the council members suggests that their species have been technologically stagnant for centuries. They're not innovating anymore. They're just maintaining what they already have." President Gonzalez leaned back in her chair. "And they want to impose that same stagnation on us." "That's exactly what they want," Jake confirmed. "They've done it to other species before. The Cathari used to have a space program. The Rillan were forced to abandon their homeworld. The Jorvik became servants to more powerful species." The president was quiet for a long moment, looking at something off-screen. When she turned back, her expression was grim but determined. "Jake, I need you to know something. We've been preparing for this possibility ever since we learned about the Council's treatment of younger species. Admiral Clark will brief you on Operation Exodus." Another face appeared on the screen. Admiral Patricia Clark was the head of Colonial Defense Command. She was a stern woman with gray hair and eyes like steel. Jake had served under her years ago and respected her tactical mind. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Clark said, "for the past 3 years, we have been secretly preparing for the possibility that the Council would try to restrict human expansion. Operation Exodus is our contingency plan." "What kind of contingency plan?" Jake asked. "Complete withdrawal from Council space," Admiral Clark replied. "Every human colony, research station, and military installation has been equipped with advanced jump drives. We can evacuate the entire human presence from the galaxy within 72 hours. Ryan leaned forward. "Evacuate to where?" "Beyond the galactic rim," Admiral Clark explained. "Our deep space exploration teams have identified several rogue star systems in the void between galaxies. We've been secretly establishing supply depots and construction facilities there for 2 years. Lisa stared at the screen. "You're talking about abandoning everything we've built in the galaxy." "We're talking about preserving human freedom," President Gonzalez said firmly. "The Council wants to turn us into another controlled species, That is not acceptable. Helen had been quiet during the exchange, but now she spoke. Madam President, if we withdraw completely, it will send a message to every other species in the galaxy. We would be showing them that there is an alternative to council control. That's part of the plan, Admiral Clark said. Intelligence reports suggest that several younger species are growing restless under council oversight. The Cathari have been secretly trying to rebuild their space program. The Rillan are questioning why they were forced from their homeworld. Jake looked at his team. They all understood what was being proposed. Humanity would not fight the council directly. Instead, they would simply leave. No negotiations, no compromises, no gradual acceptance of restrictions. They would pack up everything and disappear into the darkness between galaxies. What about our trade relationships? Helen asked. We have agreements with dozens of species. All human commercial operations have been briefed, Admiral Clark replied. They will complete current contracts and then withdraw. No new agreements will be signed. The economic impact will be significant, President Gonzalez added. Human trade and technology have become important to many species. They will feel our absence immediately. Lisa was studying her readings from the council session. Madam President, based on what I observed today, I don't think the council understands how integrated human activities have become with the galactic economy. They see us as a minor irritation to be controlled. Their mistake, Ryan said grimly. Admiral Clark continued the briefing. All human military units have been placed on alert. Colonial governors have been notified. Research teams are preparing to evacuate with all their data and equipment. The withdrawal will be swift and complete. What's our timeline? Jake asked. The council has given you 1 day to accept their terms, President Gonzalez said. Use that time to gather any additional intelligence you can. When you reject their ultimatum tomorrow, Operation Exodus will begin immediately. The communication ended, leaving the 4 humans alone in their ship's conference room. They sat in silence for several minutes, processing what they had just learned. Their government had been planning this contingency for years, preparing for the possibility that the council would overreach. Helen was the first to speak. We're really going to do this. We're going to walk away from everything. Not everything, Jake corrected. We're walking away from their control. We're taking our freedom with us. Lisa looked at her scanner readings again. The council species average about 200 years of technological advancement in the past 1,000 years. Humans have advanced more in the last 50 years than they have in 5 centuries. And they want to slow us down to their pace, Ryan said. Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the massive bulk of Nexus Station. Ships from across the galaxy came and went from its docking bays. For 3,000 years, this place had been the center of galactic civilization. Tomorrow, humanity would turn its back on all of it. We should prepare our response for tomorrow's session, Helen said. It needs to be clear but not provocative. We don't want to give them an excuse to attack our evacuation. Keep it simple, Jake suggested. We decline their offer and choose to withdraw from council space. They won't understand at first, Lisa said. The concept of a species choosing exile over submission is foreign to them. Ryan checked his weapon and communication gear. They'll understand eventually. When they realize we're actually leaving, they'll try to stop us. Let them try, Jake said quietly. By the time they figure out what's happening, we'll be gone. The 4 humans spent the rest of the day preparing for what would be one of the most important diplomatic sessions in galactic history. They reviewed their intelligence on council security, planned their route back to the ship, and coordinated with the evacuation fleet that was already moving into position throughout human space. As the station's artificial night cycle began, Jake stood in, his quarters looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the rim of the galaxy, a new chapter in human history was about to begin. The council thought they were dealing with a species that would bow to their authority like so many others before them. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The council chambers filled with beings from across the galaxy as the second day of sessions began. Word had spread through Nexus Station that the humans were giving their answer to the council's ultimatum. Many species had been through this process before, and they knew how it would end. The young species would accept the Council's wisdom and take their place in the galactic order. Jake Morrison led his team down the steps to the center of the chamber. The four humans looked calm and composed, showing no signs of the stress that should come with such a momentous decision. This puzzled some of the observers, who expected to see fear or resignation in the faces of beings about to lose their independence. High Counselor Vextar of the Vorthak pulsed with satisfied colors. His crystalline form reflected the chamber's lights as he prepared to accept humanity's surrender. Around him, the other 11 council members settled into their ancient seats, ready to welcome another species into supervised development. Humans of Earth, Vextar began, his translated voice carrying across the vast chamber. You have had time to consider our generous offer. The wisdom of the Council is clear. You will now formally accept our guidance and protection. Ambassador. Helen Torres stepped forward. Her voice was steady and clear as she spoke. Honored counselors, we have indeed considered your offer carefully. Excellent, rumbled Counselor Mordak of the Zephyrians. The formalities can now begin. We respectfully decline, Helen said. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the background hum of life support systems seemed to pause. Thousands of alien beings stared down at the small group of humans in disbelief. High Counselor Zarthek of the Netheri was the first to react. His gaseous form swirled violently within his containment suit. Decline? You cannot decline. This is not a request. This is a decree of the Galactic Council. Nevertheless, Helen replied calmly, we decline. Vexitar's crystalline body flashed angry red colors. No species has ever refused the Council's guidance. You do not understand the gravity of your situation. We understand perfectly, Jake said, speaking for the first time. You want to control us. We choose freedom instead. The Council erupted in chaos. 12 different species began speaking at once in their various languages. Translation devices struggled to keep up with the flood of outraged voices. Some Council members demanded immediate military action. Others called for economic sanctions. A few seemed confused about what was actually happening. Counselor Velthar of the Corvani pounded his staff for order. Silence. Humans, you will reconsider this foolish decision immediately. The consequences of defying the Council are severe. What consequences? Ryan asked quietly. Military blockade of your systems, Zarthek threatened. Economic isolation. Removal from all galactic trade networks. Forced relocation if necessary, added Mordak. Lisa activated her scanner and began recording the threats. The data would be useful for the evacuation fleet commanders who needed to know what level of resistance to expect. Helen looked around the chamber at the thousands of alien observers. Many of them represented species that had been forced to accept Council control in the past. Their eyes showed a mixture of fear and curiosity. No one had ever seen a species refuse the Council so directly. Honored counselors, Helen said, raising her voice to be heard throughout the chamber. Humanity thanks you for your time. This conversation is over. She turned to walk away. Jake, Lisa, and Ryan followed her without a word. The Council's reaction was immediate and explosive. Vextar's crystalline form blazed with furious light. You cannot simply leave. Guards, stop them! The chamber's security robots moved to block the humans' path to the exit. Their red sensors locked onto the four figures climbing the steps, energy weapons charged with threatening whines. Jake stopped and looked back at the Council. His voice carried clearly across the chamber. We came here hoping for equals. We found masters seeking slaves. This conversation is over. He pressed a small device on his belt. Throughout Nexus Station, every human-made system began broadcasting the same message on all communication frequencies. The message was simple and went out in dozens of languages to every ship and facility in the area. Attention all human personnel. Operation Exodus has begun. Evacuate immediately. Repeat, Operation Exodus has begun. The Council members looked at each other in confusion. They had no idea what Operation Exodus meant, but the calm certainty in Jake's voice suggested it was significant. Lisa finished downloading data from her scanner and closed the device. She had biological information on all 12 council species. That might prove useful later. The humans had not wasted their time at Nexus Station. Ryan calmly observed the positions of the security robots and the exits from the chamber. His military training told him that the situation could turn violent quickly, but something in the humans' behavior suggested they were not worried about immediate physical danger. "You will not leave these chambers until you accept the Council's authority," Vexitar declared. Helen looked up at the crystalline being with something that might have been pity. "We are leaving now. You can either move your robots or explain to the galaxy why you murdered diplomatic representatives." The threat hung in the air. The Council ruled through authority and bureaucracy, not through open violence against diplomatic missions. Killing the human representatives would undermine their legitimacy with many species. Reluctantly, Vextar signaled for the robots to step aside. The 4 humans walked past them without hurrying, showing no fear or concern. Their calm confidence was more unsettling to the Council than angry defiance would have been. As the humans reached the chamber doors, chaos erupted behind them. Council members shouted orders in multiple languages. Some demanded that the station be sealed to prevent the humans from leaving. Others called for immediate military action against human space. But the humans were already walking through the corridors of Nexus Station, and something strange was happening around them. Other humans, throughout the station, were moving with purpose toward the docking bays, not running, not showing panic, but moving with the calm efficiency of people executing a well-rehearsed plan. In the commercial sector, human traders were closing their shops and packing their goods. Human technicians were leaving their maintenance posts. Human researchers were gathering their equipment and data. Every human on Nexus Station was heading for the docking bays at the same time. The 4 diplomats reached the UES Liberty and boarded quickly. Jake went straight to the bridge while his team secured their gear. Within minutes, the ship was ready to depart. "Nexus Control, this is UES Liberty requesting immediate departure clearance," Jake announced over the communication system. "Liberty, you are ordered to remain docked pending Council review," came the reply. "Nexus Control, we are departing now. Please clear the docking bay." Jake activated the ship's engines without waiting for permission. The Liberty pulled away from the docking port with smooth precision. Around them, other human vessels were doing the same thing. Every human ship at Nexus Station was undocking simultaneously. Station security tried to respond, but they were confused by the coordinated nature of the departure. No one was running or acting desperately. The humans were simply leaving in an orderly fashion as if they had every right to do so. Within an hour, every human had left Nexus Station. The docking bays that had housed human ships stood empty. The commercial sectors that had been filled with human businesses were vacant. It was as if humanity had simply evaporated from the heart of galactic civilization. But this was only the beginning. Throughout Council space, the same scene was playing out on thousands of worlds. Human colonies were evacuating with impossible speed and efficiency. Research stations were packing up decades of work in hours. Trade outposts were closing and their staff disappearing into space. The evacuation fleet that had been secretly assembled over the past 3 years swung into action. Massive transport ships appeared at human settlements to collect people and equipment. Military vessels provided escort and protection. Supply ships carried the resources needed for the journey to humanity's new home beyond the galactic rim. Council forces tried to respond, but they were scattered across thousands of systems and had never faced anything like this before. Individual commanders were uncertain about their authority to use force against departing civilians. By the time clear orders came from Nexus Station, most human settlements were already empty. The Council had expected negotiation, compromise, or gradual submission. They had not prepared for complete withdrawal. Their bureaucratic systems were not designed to handle a species that simply walked away from their authority. On the bridge of the Liberty, Jake watched the evacuation reports coming in from across human space. Colony after colony reported successful departure. Research teams confirmed that all data and equipment had been secured. Military units reported no significant resistance from Council forces. Status report, he asked Helen. 70% of our people are already en route to the rally points, she replied. The rest will be evacuated within 18 hours. Lisa looked up from her analysis station. I'm detecting significant communication traffic between Council worlds. They're trying to coordinate a response, but they seem confused about what's actually happening. 6 months had passed since the humans disappeared from the galaxy. At first, the Galactic Council had been confident that the stubborn species would return quickly. No civilization could survive outside the established trade networks and protection systems that the Council provided. The humans would realize their mistake and come back ready to accept supervision. They were wrong. High Counselor Vextar stood in his private chambers aboard Nexus Station, staring out at the stars through a crystal window. His crystalline body pulsed with worried colors as he reviewed the daily reports. The galaxy was changing, and not in ways the Council had expected. The first signs of trouble had appeared within weeks of the human departure. The Cathari, inspired by humanity's defiance, had begun secretly rebuilding their space program. Council inspectors found hidden construction facilities on 3 Cathari worlds, building ships that violated the restrictions placed on their species decades ago. When confronted, the Cathari leader had said something that chilled Vextar to his core. The humans showed us that saying no is possible. We choose to follow their example. Similar unrest was spreading among other controlled species. The Rillan were demanding answers about why they had been forced from their homeworld. Young members of the Jorvik species were questioning why their people served others instead of governing themselves. The careful order that the Council had maintained for millennia was beginning to crack. But the political unrest was only part of the problem. The economic consequences of humanity's departure were proving far more severe than anyone had anticipated. Counselor Mordak of the Zephyrians entered Vextar's chambers without being announced. Her insect-like features were agitated, and her mandibles clicked nervously as she spoke. The food crisis on our colonies is getting worse, she reported. Without human agricultural techniques, our crop yields have dropped by 30%. The synthetic fertilizers the humans provided are running out, and we cannot replicate their production methods. Vexitar's colors shifted to annoyed orange. Surely our own scientists can develop alternatives. They have been trying for months, Mordak replied. The humans integrated biological and technological approaches in ways our people never considered. We focused on controlling nature. They learned to work with it. Similar reports had been coming in from across Council space. The Vorthak mining operations that had used human efficiency protocols were seeing massive drops in productivity. Transport systems that relied on human logistics software were failing. Even simple trade agreements were falling apart without human commercial networks to facilitate them. High Counselor Zarthek of the Netheri materialized in the chamber, his gaseous form contained within his mobile suit. The situation in the SO outer rim is deteriorating rapidly, he announced. What situation? Vextar asked, though he suspected he already knew. The Devourers, Zarthek replied. Our deep space monitors detected 3 more probe ships in the past week. They are testing our defenses, learning our capabilities. The Devourers were a mechanical species from outside the galaxy. For years, they had been sending small scout ships to probe the galactic rim, but the Council had not considered them a serious threat. Their technology seemed primitive compared to the established civilizations within the galaxy. Our fleet commanders are confident they can handle a few probe ships, Vextar said. That was before we lost the human tactical systems, Zarthek replied grimly. The humans had developed new defensive strategies that our military incorporated, without fully understanding them. Now our commanders are discovering gaps in their capabilities that they did not know existed. Mordak pulled up a holographic display showing military engagement records. 3 encounters with Devourer probes in the past month. In every case, our forces achieved victory, but at much higher cost than expected. The enemy ships adapt quickly to our tactics. Vextar studied the data with growing concern. The Council's military had been designed for policing and peacekeeping, not for fighting an innovative enemy. They had relied on their technological superiority and established tactics to maintain order. The humans had brought fresh thinking to military strategy. but the Council had never bothered to learn the principles behind their innovations. There is more, Zarthek continued. Our intelligence networks have been searching for the humans for months. We finally detected energy signatures in deep space beyond the galactic rim. And, Vextar prompted, the signatures suggest massive construction projects. The humans are not just hiding in empty space, they are building something. The three Council members stood in silence contemplating this news. The species they had dismissed as unruly children had vanished into the void and were apparently thriving there. Meanwhile, the galaxy they had left behind was slowly falling apart. Communication signal interrupted their meeting. The face of Admiral Korthvek, the Council's military commander, appeared on the display. His reptilian features showed signs of stress that would have been unthinkable months ago. Honored counselors, Admiral Korthvek said, I must report a significant development. 3 Council member species have formally requested military assistance against internal unrest. Which species? Vextar asked, though he dreaded the answer. The Malhari, the Sekthan, and the Thorek. In each case, younger generations are demanding the same freedoms that humanity claimed. They are using human departure as proof that Council authority can be challenged. Mordak made a sound of distress. How many systems are affected? 47 systems are experiencing active resistance movements. Another 112 show signs of growing unrest. The rebels are coordinating their activities across species lines, sharing tactics and communication methods. This was unprecedented in galactic history. The Council had always maintained order by keeping different species isolated from each other, preventing the formation of alliances that might challenge their authority. But humanity's example had shown other species that cooperation was possible. What do you recommend, Admiral? Zarthek asked. Immediate military intervention in the most troubled systems, Admiral Korthvek replied. We must restore order before the rebellion spreads further. Vextar considered this option. Military action would certainly restore immediate control, but it would also prove to the galaxy that the Council ruled through force rather than wisdom. The carefully maintained illusion of benevolent guidance would be shattered. Delay any military action for now, he decided. Continue monitoring the situation. After the Admiral signed off, the 3 counselors returned to their grim assessment of the galaxy's condition. The humans have been gone for 6 months, Mordak observed. In that time, we have lost more control over galactic affairs than in the previous century. It is worse than loss of control, Zarthek added. We are losing legitimacy. Other species are beginning to question why they need our guidance at all. Vextar moved to another display showing economic data from across the galaxy. Trade volumes were down 20%. Industrial production had fallen in key sectors. Several important scientific research projects had been abandoned when human participants withdrew their expertise. The humans were more integrated into galactic civilization than we realized, he admitted. We saw them as newcomers, who should be grateful for our attention. We failed to recognize how much we had come to depend on their contributions. A new communication signal interrupted them. This time it was Counselor Rathmon of the Selvek, calling from his homeworld in the inner systems. Fellow counselors, Rathmon said, his scaled features showing unusual emotion. I have disturbing news. Our archaeologists have discovered records of a previous devourer incursion over 2,000 years ago. What kind of records? Vextar asked. Ancient defensive installations in the outer rim. The previous galactic civilizations built extensive fortifications against mechanical invaders from beyond the galaxy. According to the records, the devourers return every few millennia to test our defenses. Zarthek's gaseous form swirled faster within his suit. Are you saying this is not the first time they have come? The records suggest a pattern. Rathmon confirmed. They probe, they learn, they adapt, and then they return in greater numbers. The previous civilizations barely survived their last major assault. How did they survive? Mordak asked. Innovation, Rathmon replied. Rapid technological advancement, new tactical approaches, adaptive strategies. Everything that the current council has discouraged in favor of stability and order. The implications were clear. The Council's policy of maintaining technological stagnation and preventing rapid advancement had left the galaxy vulnerable to an enemy that specialized in adaptation and innovation. There is something else, Rathmon continued. The ancient records describe the most effective anti-devourer weapons. They were developed by a young, rapidly advancing species that refused to accept limitations imposed by the galactic government of that time. Vextar felt a chill run through his crystalline structure. A species like humanity. Exactly like humanity, Rathmon confirmed. And we drove them away. The three counselors stood in stunned silence as the full scope of their mistake became clear. They had not just lost a troublesome species that refused to accept their authority. They had banished the galaxy's best hope for survival against an ancient.
1 year had passed since humanity vanished from the galaxy, and the Galactic Council was in crisis. What had begun as a simple administrative action to control an unruly species had become a disaster that threatened the very foundation of galactic
civilization. High Counselor Vextar stood in the emergency session chamber, looking at displays that showed the current state of Council space. Red markers indicated systems in open rebellion. Yellow markers showed areas of unrest. Blue markers represented the few remaining stable regions. There was far too much red and yellow, and the blue areas were shrinking every day. The Devourer invasion had begun 3 months ago. Not with a massive fleet as expected, but with small coordinated strikes that demonstrated terrifying tactical intelligence. The mechanical beings had learned from their probe missions and adapted their strategies faster than Council forces could respond. 7 systems in the Outer Rim had already fallen. The Council's military, built for peacekeeping rather than innovation, proved inadequate against an enemy that constantly evolved its tactics. Every engagement taught the Devourers something new about galactic defenses, making them stronger for the next battle. Admiral Korthvek delivered his daily report with the exhausted voice of a commander fighting a losing war. The enemy has adapted to our plasma weapons and energy shields. They are now using directed electromagnetic pulses that disable our systems before we can engage them effectively. What about the new defensive strategies our scientists developed? Asked Counselor Mordak. They worked for 2 weeks, Admiral Korthvek replied grimly. Then the Devourers adapted again. Our rate of innovation cannot match their rate of adaptation. Vextar's crystalline form pulsed with frustrated colors. The Council had spent centuries perfecting their existing technology, rather than developing new approaches. They had the wisdom of age but lacked the flexibility of youth. The very stability they had prized was now proving to be a fatal weakness. Counselor. Sarthek materialized beside the tactical display, his gaseous form swirling with agitation. The rebellion is spreading faster than the invasion. 43 species have now declared independence from Council authority. They are forming their own defensive alliances. Based on the human model, Mordak observed bitterly. The younger species had studied humanity's departure carefully. They saw how humans had coordinated their evacuation, shared resources, and worked together despite being scattered across the galaxy. Now they were applying those same principles to resist both Council control and Devourer attacks. Some of the rebel alliances were actually succeeding where Council forces had failed. The Cathari had developed new weapons using principles they learned from studying abandoned human research data. The Rillan were coordinating multi-species fleets that used unconventional tactics the Devourers had not yet encountered. There is something else, Admiral Korthvek continued. Our long-range sensors have detected massive energy signatures moving toward the galaxy from the void beyond the rim. The humans? Vextar asked, though he already knew the answer. Irma. Energy patterns match human technology, but amplified far beyond anything they possessed when they left. Whatever they have been building out there, it is much larger than our most optimistic estimates suggested. For months, Council intelligence had been trying to locate humanity's new home. Deep space telescopes detected construction activity in the void between galaxies, but the scale was hard to believe. The humans appeared to be building structures around entire star systems, harnessing energy on a level that should have been impossible for such a young species. Counselor Rathmon of the Selvek joined the emergency session via quantum communication. from his besieged homeworld. His normally calm demeanor was replaced by obvious desperation. "Fellow counselors," he said, "I must report that the Devourer forces attacking our system have displayed new capabilities. They are now using weapons that appear to be based on our own defensive systems, improved and turned against us. This was the Devourer's most terrifying ability. They did not just adapt to enemy tactics, they incorporated captured technology into their own forces, often improving it in the process. Every weapon the Council used against them eventually became a weapon used against the Council." "The ancient records were correct," Rathmon continued. "This enemy cannot be defeated through conventional warfare. They require an opponent capable of constant innovation, rapid adaptation, and unconventional thinking. The kind of opponent we banished," Zarthek said quietly. The council chamber fell silent. Outside, another report came in of a system falling to Devourer forces. The mechanical invaders were not just conquering territory, they were learning from each victory, becoming stronger and more sophisticated with every engagement. Vextar made the decision that he had been avoiding for months. Prepare a message for transmission to human space. "What kind of message?" Mordak asked. "A formal request for assistance," Vextar replied. The words tasted bitter, but necessity demanded honesty. "Include full recognition of human sovereignty and an offer of alliance between equals." The other council members looked at him in shock. In 3,000 years of galactic history, the council had never requested help from a species they had tried to control. The very concept went against everything they believed about their own authority and wisdom, but belief was a luxury they could no longer afford. The message was transmitted to the last known coordinates of human space, beyond the galactic rim. For weeks there was no response. The council began to wonder if humanity had moved so far away that communication was impossible, or if they had simply chosen to ignore their former oppressors. Then, 3 months after the message was sent, a single human ship appeared at Nexus Station. The vessel was unlike anything the council had seen before. It was larger than the ships humanity had possessed when they left, and its hull displayed technology that seemed to bend light around it. Energy patterns indicated power systems far in advance of anything in council space. Ambassador Helen Torres requested permission to dock, using the same polite diplomatic language she had employed a year earlier, but everything else about the situation had changed. This time the council was asking for her help. Helen entered the council chambers alone, walking with the same quiet confidence she had shown during humanity's departure. But she looked different, now. Her hair was completely silver, and her eyes held knowledge that came from experiences beyond the galaxy. The council members who had once looked down on humanity now found themselves looking up at a representative of a species that had grown beyond their understanding. "Ambassador Torres," Vextar said, his crystalline form pulsing with subdued colors. "We thank you for responding to our message." "I am here to listen," Helen replied simply. High Counselor Zarthek leaned forward in his containment suit. "The galaxy faces destruction from the Devourer invasion. Our forces are inadequate to the task. We formally request assistance from humanity." "In exchange for what?" Helen asked. The question hung in the air. A year ago, the council had demanded submission in exchange for protection. Now they were offering, what exactly? "Full recognition of human sovereignty," Vextar said. "Complete technological freedom. Unrestricted expansion rights." Helen listened without expression. "And the other species currently under council restrictions?" "They would receive the same freedoms," Mordak admitted reluctantly. "The council system would be restructured to allow genuine self-determination for all species," Zarthek added. Helen was quiet for a long moment, considering their offer. Outside the chamber, the fate of galactic civilization hung in the balance. "We'll convey your request to our leadership," she said finally. "But I should tell you that humanity has changed during our time in the void. We are not the same species that left this galaxy a year ago." "Changed how?" Vextar asked. Helen smiled, slightly. You tried to chain those who were meant to soar. We didn't argue. We didn't fight. We simply chose to soar elsewhere. And in doing so, we learned that the sky is much larger than any of us imagined. She turned to leave, then paused. The answer to your request will come soon. But you should understand that if we choose to help, it will be as equals working together, not as subjects serving masters. After Helen left, the council members sat in stunned silence. They had expected negotiation, compromise, perhaps even gloating. Instead, they received a calm evaluation from beings who had grown beyond the need for revenge. 3 days later, the human response arrived, not as a message but as a fleet emerging from beyond the galactic rim. Hundreds of ships, each one displaying technology that made council vessels look primitive by comparison. Admiral Jake Morrison, now commanding humanity's deep space fleet, sent a simple communication to Nexus Station. We come not as subjects or as conquerors, but as neighbors offering assistance to neighbors. The galaxy belongs to all who call it home. The Devourer invasion was turned back within months, not through superior firepower, but through innovative tactics that the mechanical invaders could not adapt to quickly enough. Humanity fought alongside the rebel alliances, sharing technology and strategies freely. When the crisis ended, the galaxy had been transformed. The Council's authority was replaced by a federation of equals, with each species governing itself according to its own nature.